There is a predator race which take a reptilian form. Reptilian drinking milk. They're feeding off humanity. They've turned humanity into a slave race. They're feeding off humanity. In simple terms, there is a predator race which take a reptilian form. They demand human sacrifice. That's where Satanism comes in. They demand human sacrifice. Reptilian form. Feed off human energy. Drinking milk.
Perhaps you'd like to see how snake-like I can be.
In the world of conspiracy theories, few seem crazier than the conspiracy of the Babylon Brotherhood. The theory alleges there are shape-shifting reptilian humanoids living among us, disguised as some of the world's top figures. This story was really popularized by David Icke, a conspiracy nut who claims these blood-drinking alien lizards from another dimension are trying to take over the planet by gaining political power and media influence.
Don't mention the reptiles. They'll just laugh at you again. I said, I know. But I've seen enough and heard enough to believe that it's real, and so I say it. They'll just laugh at you again.
Icke claims these creatures come from the constellation Draco and have infiltrated our planet. They've taken over positions of power, and they have secret underground tunnels deep inside the Earth that they use to get around. There are full-blooded reptilian alien masters, and then there are human-reptilian hybrids, over which the masters have mind control. These creatures feed off negative energy, so they seek to keep the world in a constant state of conflict. The masters at the very top of Icke's conspiracy are, as he calls them, the prison warders, sitting on a pyramid of global control. These shape-shifting reptiles secretly control pretty much everything. Politicians, banks, media, religion, education, even organized crime. Icke claims the British royal family, the Rothschilds, George Bush, Obama, and pretty much every US president ever are all reptilian hybrids part of the Babylon Brotherhood. He believes these evil creatures partake in pedophilia and human sacrifice in the name of Satanism, because apparently these reptilians from another dimension believe in Abrahamic religions. Referring to David Icke as a nut rather than just another conspiracy theorist may seem harsh, but he's been doing this sort of thing for a long time, so it's hard not to think he's either crazy or just another troll. David Icke was an English soccer player in the 60s and 70s, but his career was cut short due to arthritis. In 1981, Icke became a sports broadcaster for BBC's Newsnight. During the 80s, Icke became interested in New Age philosophies in an attempt to alleviate his arthritis. This seemingly started his descent into some unconventional beliefs. New Agers typically believe in things like alternative medicine, psychics, astrology, energy, and the paranormal. In 1990, David Icke visited a psychic who told him that he would heal the world and would become famous for it. Shortly after, he felt compelled to visit Peru, and while there, Icke claims to have had some sort of spiritual energy experience which changed his life. It was during this time that Icke started writing books, the first few of which were about his newfound spirituality and the impending apocalypse.
According to his book, The Truth Vibrations, the world as we know it is about to end. David Icke.
The world is not necessarily going to end, but the Earth is going to go through a series of geological changes. There is an energy that comes from a being called the Godhead. Turquoise actually is the same frequency as an energy called love and wisdom. Therefore, when you wear that color, you're attracted. Over a long period of time, a tremendous amount of energy has built up within the Earth. If it doesn't get out, bang, bang, through earthquakes, through volcanoes and such like.
The press claim that you claim to be the Son of God. Mm-hmm. Is that true?
Yes, you see, the thing is that it's quite funny, really. You know, 2,000 years ago, had a guy called Jesus sat here and said these same things, you would still be laughing. It's really funny that we've not really moved on that much.
Icke's vision of change was earthquakes and tidal waves destroying England and the world falling into chaos. He saw himself as a prophet, but as you saw by the crowd's reaction, Icke's public persona went from journalist and author to laughingstock overnight. He tried to paint himself as a misunderstood savior, but most people saw him for what he really is, a charlatan. Many conspiracy theorists seem to have a messiah complex in the way they allege to have some sort of special knowledge that's going to save the human race. Alleged spiritual visions are not proof of anything other than a possible mental illness. Hallucinations are a common characteristic of psychosis, schizophrenia, and many other serious diseases. Still, David Icke's spiritual connection and intuition would become a common theme in many of his claims, because it's real easy to dismiss naysayers by claiming to have divine knowledge. Inspired by his spiritual experience, David Icke got to writing, and it wasn't long before the voices in his head started getting really creative. Icke's fifth book, The Robot's Rebellion, gathered some controversy with accusations of anti-Semitism since it contained a chapter based on another controversial work.
The Protocol of the Elder Messiah.
Sure is an epic title. Published at the turn of the 20th century, the book claims to be a conversation from a secret Zionist meeting discussing a global Jewish takeover by controlling the media, the banks, and the government. However, the protocols have been proven to be a fake numerous times, the first of those being in 1921. The protocols were basically just anti-Semitic, anti-liberal propaganda made by the Russian bureaucracy, and it heavily plagiarized this book, The Dialogue in Hell Between Machiavelli and Montesquieu. Despite being debunked numerous times, the protocols continue to fuel countless conspiracies such as the New World Order and Icke's reptilian elite. The NWO and Illuminati conspiracies that inspire Icke's own theory are topics too huge to cover here, but you can be sure we'll be talking about both of those and going more in depth on why people believe conspiracy theories in future episodes of Urban Myths. In The Robot's Rebellion, David Icke claims a shadowy group is planning world domination and references the fraudulent protocols as proof of this secret plot. As mentioned before, he gained a lot of heat over this and lost his political affiliation to England's Green Party. Icke seemingly doubled down with his next book, And the Truth Shall Set You Free, which contained a chapter toying with the idea that a small group of self-hating Jews were the ones really responsible for World War II and the Holocaust. David Icke dismissed the accusations of being an anti-Semite and claims it's just the Zionists or the Rothschilds doing this, not the Jewish people as a whole. Besides, Zionists and Jewish bankers are just code words for reptilian. How could anybody say this guy is anti-Semitic? Slowly but surely, David Icke's New Age ideas about good versus evil and spiritual energy turned into full-blown conspiracy theories about shadowy organizations and secret plots. He did not leave the woo-woo behind, however, instead creating a whole new, albeit pretty unoriginal, urban myth. He is influenced by and borrows from numerous sources. This is really where Icke's grand theory falls apart because, as you'll see throughout this video, we can see all the pieces he used to put it together. His Babylon Brotherhood is just a tangled web of New Age mysticism, urban legends, New World Order conspiracies, mythology, and a whole lot of fiction. It was in 1999's The Biggest Secret that David Icke finally introduced us to the lizard people, interdimensional shapeshifters drinking all our blood. What was seemingly just another New World Order conspiracy turned into Satanist alien lizards. Not crazy enough? The moon is actually a huge spacecraft from within which the reptilians control us through some sort of signal that makes us unable to see reality.
It's broadcasting something that it acts as a blocking frequency that stops us seeing and perceiving things that we would normally perceive. The Saturn moon matrix, and it's basically having the effect of the fake reality in the Matrix movies.
That sounds nothing like the Matrix, and we pretty much know what the moon is made of. It ain't cheese, and it ain't alien lizard space tech. Icke's idea that there's some sort of hologram or signal affecting our perception is far-fetched too. There are spectrums of energy which we cannot see, but people way smarter than you and I have still found ways to observe and measure those. We can't see radio waves or gamma rays, but we still know what they are and how they work. Conspiracists will often try to hijack science in order to prop up their own theories. This is how David Icke puts the whole thing together. Little bit of this and a little bit of lizard. Professor Michael Barkun wrote a great book titled A Culture of Conspiracy, which touches on the origins of modern conspiracy theory, including Icke's Babylon Brotherhood. Barkun mentions another writer named Bruce Allen Walton, who wrote several stories and internet postings under the pseudonym Branton. As Barkun points out in his book, Branton admits to having emotional and psychological disabilities resulting from years of suppressed interactions with what he believes to be malevolent alien agendas. Branton's writings claim he has intuitive memories in the form of dreams involving some sort of alien abduction and a secret government agency. In the late 90s and early 2000s, he wrote about his experiences and underground colonies of aliens and reptilians and secret treaties with the government. These stories soon influenced David Icke as he began including quotes from Branton in his own works. Icke seemingly looks at Branton as the authority on reptilian questions, a man who admits to having psychological issues and admits he has no conscious memory of any of these abductions, but rather an intuitive memory. That is pretty much the definition of psychosis, or the writings of a fiction author. Yet David Icke has no problem citing Branton as the real deal, perhaps because many of his own claims have been based on intuition. Branton's stories of underground tunnels and alien races aren't original either. As Professor Barkun reveals in his book, these tales of underground aliens may have originated in Dulce, New Mexico, sometime in the 70s. The story of Dulce is similar to that of Nevada's Area 51. Conspiracists claim Dulce is home to an underground CIA alien laboratory where a massive alien-human battle took place. As the story of Dulce spread, it was alleged to be just one part of a larger network of bases connected via tunnels. Originally, the inhabitants of these secret underground tunnels and layers were the Greys, what we sometimes associate with extraterrestrials. Over the years, however, the stories evolved to include reptilians. In this way, conspiracy theories are a lot like urban legends. Details often change as the story gets passed around, like a massive game of conspiracy telephone. Conspiracies spread like urban legends too, like rumors. The more they are repeated, the more likely you are to believe them. Another problem with Icke citing Branton as a source of proof is a massive problem in the entirety of the conspiracy theory world. In their writings, the likes of Icke create a web of self-reference where one conspiracy is somehow proof of another. In doing so, conspiracists commit several logical fallacies: false authority, circular reasoning, proof by assertion, and probably a bunch more. Conspiracists believe everything is connected and the truth is hidden. This creates a closed system of ideas that's more akin to faith than actual theory. Because the conspiracist world has no room for accident, pattern is believed to be everywhere, hidden from plain view. Hence, the conspiracy theorist must engage in a constant process of linkage and correlation in order to map the hidden connections. Barkun's definition of the conspiracist puts him in a world where everything is connected, nothing happens by accident, and nothing is as it seems. It doesn't matter if Branton's writings are a paranoid delusion or just a work of fiction. In David Icke's mind, those stories are the only real thing out there. You may be thinking, who'd believe this? Yeah, most people think this conspiracy theory is just plain wacky. Nevertheless, David Icke's lectures draw crowds of thousands, and there are people who believe this creepy, crawly conspiracy. The wonderful thing about the internet is that it connects people to each other and to information to which they otherwise might not have been able to access. But of course, that can also be a bad thing. It may appear that David Icke's conspiracy theories have gained popularity, but it may just be the fact that all information is now more easily available, and people with weird and niche interests or beliefs can almost instantly find what they're looking for. David Icke's got his fans, but most people react to this conspiracy today the same way they did when Icke claimed to be Jesus of the Godhead or whatever. They think it's a joke.
Yes, I'm delighted that there's so much laughter in the audience tonight.
But no,
but just let me say this.
They're laughing at you. They're not laughing with you.
David Icke likely makes most of his money from his books, press tours, and speeches, so it would certainly be in his best interest to revise and add to his conspiracies. Because apparently, the more you write about something, the more true it is.
It's not the size of it. Yeah. 350,000 words. 350,000 words. 350,000 words. That, in one book, is the scale of information that has come into my life about these things. See, that is not a theory. That is evidence supporting the fact.
By that logic, Hogwarts is real, and you're a wizard. There's only so many ways to spin a single story, so it's no wonder Icke's ideas are getting more and more fantastical and L. Ron Hubbardy. He has to keep people coming back somehow. David Icke has his ideas on who he believes the reptilians are, and since people on the internet just eat this sort of thing up, they've come up with their own proof of reptilians walking among us. There's a bunch of videos online claiming to show reptilians shape-shifting on television. They're always titled something like, footage of reptilians, yet they're always a jagged, blurry mess. Likely captured on a digital camera as it records a screen, these videos are supposed to be the best proof that reptilians exist. It's really hard to take this seriously, since the anomalies we're seeing can be explained by the low-quality bitrate and choppy frame rate, or maybe just possibly Photoshop? No, people wouldn't do that on the internet. Icke's claims don't have much basis in reality either. So far, we've seen how the Babylon Brotherhood is shaped by his New Age worldview and a bunch of racist NWO conspiracies and some urban legends about subterranean aliens. There's also a bit of mythology and religion involved too. Icke tries to give his theory more credibility by tying this all in with the Anunnaki, ancient gods believed in by the Sumerians and the Babylonians. Icke says his reptilians come from the Anunnaki and have been on our planet since the days of ancient history, infiltrating bloodlines and creating human-lizard hybrids in order to rule the world. 4,000 years and they're still at it? By this point, we would all be reptilians. David Icke likely got this idea from Zecharia Sitchin, another conspiracy theorist who believes the Anunnaki live on a secret planet called Nibiru that only becomes visible every 3,000 years. Pretty much every year there's a new Nibiru conspiracy dating the return of these ancient gods. While those ancient Mesopotamian religions believed in many gods and spirit forces and demons, there's nothing in there about lizard overlords. And while Zecharia Sitchin does believe in an alien-human link, and a whole lot of other crazy stuff, he does not believe in the reptilians. Most other conspiracy theorists actually don't believe in David Icke's claims either, something he chalks up to them not being open-minded enough. But why reptilians? There's no shortage of snake creatures and weird reptile things in human culture, so again, it goes back to religion and mythology. Snakes have long been a symbol of rebirth and transformation. In Chinese mythology, Nuwa and Fuxi are ancient creatures with snake bodies and human heads. Born from the creation god, they are a sister and brother responsible for creating the human race. In Nordic mythology, there's all sorts of dragons and serpents. In Greek mythology, there's the Gorgons and Medusa. Snake hair is pretty dope. Even the most poppin' myth of all, Adam and Eve, featured a snake. In Christianity, the serpent is a symbol of chaos and evil, but can also be seen as a sign of fertility and healing, and again, transformation and the underground. A culture of conspiracy better explains the problem with this link between snakes and the underground. The link stems from their associations with death and evil. In the popular imagination, it is the location of hell, and Satan, the evil one, is also the serpent who deceived Eve in the Garden of Eden. Identifying the reptilians with the serpent in the story of the fall allows conspiracists to appropriate the Bible's authority and to claim biblical evidence. It's the same reason Icke tries to tie his reptilians into the Anunnaki. It's an attempt to make his story more believable with historical evidence. So, snakes were in the Bible and some people a long time ago believed some stuff, therefore reptilians? That gets tossed into the stew that Icke is brewing. A dash of mythology and religion, which really don't mix with the New Age mysticism, as those are ideas more inspired by Eastern and Asian philosophy. Nevertheless, Icke borrows ideas from all of the above and those NWO conspiracies and urban legends about underground alien tunnels. Icke's biggest influence, however, seems to be the Shadow Kingdom. In a 1929 issue of Weird Tales, author and Conan the Barbarian creator Robert E. Howard published a story titled The Shadow Kingdom. This short story is likely what inspired the conspiracy of a secret society of shape-shifting serpent men. In Howard's tale, the serpents use mind control and shape-shifting to disguise themselves while seeking to assassinate and replace a new king. Howard's reptilians are an ancient pre-human race that have humanoid bodies with snake heads and live in secret underground passages. Why does that sound familiar? As Professor Barkun points out, Howard's tales inspired countless other artists and authors, including Clark Ashton Smith and H.P. Lovecraft, who began using reptilians in their tales as well. And in the long run, it is very likely that David Icke's book / anti-lizard propaganda, Children of the Matrix, is also based on Howard's The Shadow Kingdom. Another likely inspiration, the works of 1940s cult leader Maurice Doreal. Doreal made many dubious claims in his time, including having knowledge of past lives, astral projection, and having met with 2 Atlanteans who took him to their giant underground city. Doreal wrote in detail about the underground races he encountered in 1940's The Inner Earth. It is very likely that he was also inspired by Howard's The Shadow Kingdom, as he boasted of having a huge collection of science fiction and occult works. In turn, David Icke seems to have borrowed or just straight up stolen elements from both of them, and all those other things. The New Age ideas about energy forces and spirituality, tired old globalist conspiracies based around racism and fear-mongering, urban legends about secret underground alien bases, and the musings of cult leaders and other sketchy characters, mythology, and the religious beliefs of ancient people who, while wise for their time, knew very little about the world, so they just chalked everything up to supernatural forces. None of those can be taken as credible sources. And when it comes to the Shadow Kingdom, it seems like David Icke literally just ripped off the writings of a brilliant fiction author. So, in untangling the Babylon Brotherhood, we can see it for what it really is: high fantasy, or paranoid delusion. Either Icke really believes he's some sort of savior and we're the sheeple too blind to see through the reptilian moon matrix, or he's crafted some really unoriginal conspiracy fan fiction. At the base of it all, it really is just a New World Order with lizard people. There are some things David Icke gets right. He talks about love being the ultimate truth. He encourages people to be more conscious and self-aware, not conforming to the pressures of society, and standing up for what you believe in. But when what you believe in is this ridiculous, it's hard to take you seriously. It's important to be open-minded, but it's also very important to be skeptical. In the 1980s, the British TV series V was about alien lizards taking over Earth from within. The show was remade for American audiences in 2009. Doctor Who has featured several different races of reptilians, and so has Star Trek. There have been plenty of reptiles and snakes in cartoons and children's programming. Kung Fu Panda featured Viper, an adorable snake.
We call people. The reptilians have infiltrated the media and are inserting reptilians into all of our shows to make humans less resistant when they take over.
It's interesting how people's conspiracy theories are usually confined to existing human knowledge. What I mean by that is, whenever someone talks about aliens, for example, they usually describe what we as human beings have come to think aliens may look like over the years from movies and books, either the Greys or Little Green Men. And depending on where we live and what we encounter, we all have a cultural bias that shapes the way we think. Just look at the tale of Old Saint Nick for an example of how cultural bias can affect a tale. Different countries have their own versions. Oh yeah, and Santa Claus is basically like a child's first conspiracy theory. Anyway, everyone has a cultural bias that skews their worldview. That applies to conspiracies as well. Unfortunately, a lot of conspiracies are based around racism and fear-mongering. Our perspective is limited to that which we are exposed to. Our environment, what we read and hear, and what we see. All of this madness about reptilians is just a really bad remix of the New World Order featuring mythology and fiction, filtered through the mind of a New Ager who says he talks to spirits. Wait, no, I'm sorry, spirits talk to him. Otherwise, he'd just be a dude walking around mumbling to himself. Stay vigilant, people. Thanks for watching. If you want to avoid the oncoming reptile apocalypse, subscribe to this channel for future reptilian updates. We are definitely not reptilians trying to trick you in order to assemble a directory of anti-reptilian activities. Thank you.